Thank you, Scott. Hey, good morning. Welcome. I'm Jim McKenzie, and I'm going to start with something I swore I'd never do again. I'm going to start with a joke. It seems like it's just been coming back to me. There was this church, and it was a Methodist church. And it seemed like for every year at conference time, year in and year out, for years, they went to the bishop and they said, we need a new minister. The one that we have, we need a new minister. And so every year for 17 years, they got a new minister. And then they got this one, and the first year went by, and he was expecting to get shipped off like all the others, and they invited him back for another year. And then they did the same thing the second year, and the third year, and the fourth year, and he really started wondering what was going on. And so he went to the pastor parish committee, and he said, I don't quite understand what's going on. He said, usually you guys get a new pastor every year, and yet you've had me back now for 4 years. And this fellow that was the head of their pastor parish, he kind of looked down at his shoes and he said, well, pastor, you got to understand, the reason that they keep having you back is because this church really doesn't want a minister, and you're the best thing to nothing they've ever had. So I appreciate you having me back for a second week. I feel very honored to be among you, and I cannot tell you what a warm welcome you have been extending to me, and I thank you. I'm happy to see your faces again, and I've seen some new faces here today, and Fernando and others, and I'm really happy to be here, and I welcome you all to worship, and I hope that this will be a very meaningful time of you drawing closer to God and deeper in your own walk to make meaning out of your lives. So I extend a very warm welcome to you. Please forgive me for the joke. Would you please stand for our call to worship? Welcome to this house of worship where we affirm God's eternal presence, His redeeming love, and the call to follow in His ways.
There is life here, there is joy, and there is hope for all who seek it. Lord, teach us to walk by faith.
Let me invite you to settle in, to celebrate Mother's Day with us, and to be reminded of the mysteries of God's patience and promise, of God's faithfulness and love. Please join me in our opening prayer. God of all life, we praise you today for gifts you have given to us. You have blessed us with the important things that give life meaning, things like faith, hope, and love. Today is a special day of remembrance as we celebrate our mothers. We thank you for all they mean and have meant, for the love they have shown and the care they have given. We thank you for their patience, their kindness, concern, and understanding. We thank you for the part they play in our lives and for this opportunity to say what we so often mean to say, but so rarely do. Help us to hold them in our prayers just as surely as they held us in their arms. Amen. Won't you please be seated? Could I just explain what we're doing right before? Sorry, Scott, but we've put some music, familiar hymns and things like that into our bulletins, into our worship service. But still at this time, we're inviting you not to sing. We will. It's soon to come, but it's not yet now. But we have asked our musicians to play some familiar music for you, and we'll place some of the verses on the screen. But, you know, it's really for your own meditation, but not for singing at this time. I hope you understand. I hope you're thinking about that faithfulness, that perhaps it was your mother that showed you, your grandmother, somebody that helped raise you, and someone you're thinking about today. So here's that part in the service I don't really know how to handle, but you are free to stand, to look around, to wave, to fist bump, to pat your heart. Do whatever you do to share that pandemic peace and to say to one another, isn't it great to be back in in-person worship? Why don't you take a moment and stand? Could I invite my younger friends to come up here for just a moment? I want to do something for Mother's Day, and I sure would appreciate your help. It's up to you, but this will be a lot of fun for your moms, particularly. But come on up and give me a hand here. Yeah, that's it. Come on up. Come on up. So what I need from you is I need to know your name. Let me see. Jackson. Man, I love the way you spell that. Do you know how Jackson spells his name? Jackson. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? Jackson, is your mom here today? Is she? I want us to try something. Anybody else want to join me? You're going to want to. You're going to want to. You're going to want to. Okay. All right, so Jackson, let's do something. I've been thinking that your mom knows you pretty well. Would you say? And I'm guessing that you know her pretty well. Yeah? So that. I was thinking that would be the case. And what we say in church a lot is that God knows us too. And sometimes we know God pretty well. But the one way that I thought we might show that is I'm going to have Jackson, I'm going to have you stand like right here in the middle, and you're going to be looking towards the front of the church. Okay? Try that. Just stand there. And then I'm going to have, yeah, you're good, man. But you're going to be looking this way, and I don't want you to look back, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask your mom to stand. Would Jackson's mom please stand? That's right. Now just stand right there. And then I'm going to have some other women stand. And I'm going to have you say Jackson's name. But Jackson, these women are going to say, Jackson. They're just going to say your name, right? They're going to say Jackson. And I only want you to turn around when your mom says your name. Okay? I may have her say your name the very first person, or I may wait a while. Well, let's just try and see. Ladies, I'm going to invite you simply to say Jackson, or however you want to say it. And when Jackson hears his mom's voice, he's going to turn around. Let's try. Please sit down. Thank you. That wasn't your mom. Not yet? All right. Maybe this is your mom. Not yet? Really? Are you sure? Wow. Let's try another one. Man, you were the best. You're awesome. That was your mom. That was your mom. All these other ladies said your name, but it wasn't you. It wasn't them. It wasn't your mom. But as soon as your mom said your name, you knew that, didn't you? Man, that is just great. You can have a seat. Thank you for coming. Anybody else want to try that? Anybody else want to try? Okay. The point is, when that one that gives us birth, when that one that loves us so dearly speaks our name, we instinctively know it, and we respond immediately, just like Jackson did. When God calls your name, you know it, just as sure as if your mom had called your name. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate Jackson's help as well. So one thing you're never going to see me do is stand up here and just read a scripture without giving you context. I like the old phrase that says a text with no context is pretext. We need to know the context because that sets the stage, right? And it helps us to understand the setting in which, particularly a couple of 1,000-year-old passage, what that has to say to us. "27 books in the New Testament. 21 of those are letters. 4 are Gospels, 1's Acts, which is the history of the church, and then there's Revelation, which is called an apocryphal, or not an apocryphal, but an eschatological book having to do with the end. Of all those books in the New Testament, 21 are letters. And depending upon who you read, 13 of them can be ascribed to Paul, but most scholars will say that only about 7, 8 of those are truly Pauline, that is, were truly written by Paul. One letter Paul wrote was to this church in a place called Corinth. It's called 1 Corinthians. There's also a book in the New Testament called 2 Corinthians. These both were letters to this church that Paul had helped establish. There were problems in this church. Lots of problems. Not the least of which were, of all things, how to say this? Spiritual competition. There were people that had certain gifts. Maybe they had a gift of prophecy, or they spoke in tongues, or they were particularly hospitable. Whatever the gift was, there was this sense that their gift was superior to your gift. And what happened is that people started competing with each other. There were other problems that Paul needed to sort out. Things like eating meat that was sacrificed to the idols, suing one another. Paul thought this was not something that should be done. And there were other sexual matters and things like this that these people in this new first century church were trying to sort out, given they had come from this Greek background. So Paul wrote this letter and tried to sort things out for people. And he said that of all the gifts, of all the things you could be most proud of, there was one in particular that they should be focusing on. It's only a few verses, but if you want to know the heart of the Christian gospel, I don't know of a better few verses to read to you than this. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. Love is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoings, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Now let me invite you to think broadly this morning. And as you look at those words from a couple of thousand years ago, and Paul writing to a church that was struggling to develop and grow, you might think about St. Peter's United Church of Christ. You might have heard of it. It's in Kiel, Wisconsin. And it too is struggling right now. It too is trying to grow. And I think these words that Paul spoke to the Corinthians are about the same as he would speak to us today. We'll have a little bit more to say about that in just a moment. You want to see your choir? Man, you've got a good choir in this church. is a good sounding choir. Would you believe me if I told you that today was the 113th anniversary of Mother's Day? Did you know it was Mother's Day? Yeah. It's the 113th anniversary of Mother's Day. And for many people, although, let's be honest about it, not all, but for most people, this is a very tender day. It's a day in which you can say to your mom, "Thanks, Mom. I love you, Mom. Appreciate what you've done for me and for our family." People, who was I talking to? I was talking to more than one person, I guess, this morning who said they're going out to brunch today, right? They've received cards, they've received letters from some distance, they've received gifts and flowers. But do you know that the woman who started Mother's Day, her name was Anna Jarvis? She would be appalled and very upset that we do all of this. In fact, the National Retail Federation in America says that Americans spend over $28 billion on Mother's Day. The woman who started Mother's Day would be very upset about this because she thought that the best way to celebrate Mother's Day was a handwritten note and a simple white carnation. That carnation was her mother's favorite flower. That's why we'll be handing out carnations on the way out, ladies. We invite you to receive your Mother's Day flower as our way of saying Happy Mother's Day to you. Yeah, Anna Jarvis's mother's favorite flower was a carnation, and that's why we do it. Anna Jarvis thought that a simple handwritten note was all that it would take. And in fact, she would often write very scathing letters to people that just, easy fellas, that just bought a card at Walgreens, signed their name, and sent it on its way. She thought that was totally not enough. She thought a handwritten note was what would be more personal. In fact, she went to New York City once and there was a Mother's Day celebration. Don't you know that Anna Jarvis was arrested for disturbing the peace because there was all this commercialism going on. People were selling flowers and candy and gifts and things. And she just shook her head and she said later on, before she died, she said she felt so bad about starting Mother's Day and that she wished she never would have because it had grown so far away from that personal touch that she thought it should be. She thought it should be a very personal day to the woman who had done more for you than anybody else in the world. I guess it's not easy giving birth to a national holiday, but neither is it easy giving birth to a baby. Right, ladies? As they say, if it was, it never would have started with something called labor, right? You know that. But moms want what's best for their kids. They bring them into the world, they nurse them, they feed them, they shelter them, they care for them, they educate, and they pray for them. And all they ask in the world is that they love themselves and others, they become curious about the world, and they remember who was there for them when things went bump in the night. That's all a mom wants, right? That's all you want. Let me show you a photo of the newest mother I know. Pretty good, huh? That's my youngest daughter, Annie. And her 3-week-old, did I mention my grandson? That's Archie. That's Archie. He's 3 weeks old. And if Annie looks a little tired in that picture, Barb, does she look a little tired? Not going to say. Okay. Well, but she's only getting 3 hours a night of sleep because Archie likes to eat. And Archie wants to eat when Archie wants to eat. And so she's struggling. But fortunate for her, her husband's able to have that 6-week family leave thing, and they're going to make it. They're going to make it, and with the help of the family, I tell you, I don't know how any new mother gets through these things. I honestly don't. But she loves him dearly. I think it's a... Oh, how'd that get in there? Uh-oh. We're off to a fast start. That was last week. We are off to a fast start. You know, let's go back to that slide with Annie and Archie. The Bible does talk a lot about mothers. It starts out with that Garden of Eden story, or not the Garden of Eden, but we start out with creation, and we have, we have Adam and Eve. Eve in the story is the mother of all folks. And then later on, you've got Sarah, who was married to Abraham, and he and she became the father and mother of a nation of Israelites. Later on in the New Testament, we've got John the Baptist's mom, whose name was Elizabeth, and then you all know about Mary. That was Jesus' mom. There are lots of moms in between those stories because in the Bible, mothers are a big thing. And why shouldn't they be? If it wasn't for the moms, none of us would be here at all. As I said, being a mom is not always easy. And the task of motherhood, even with all of its great benefits, let me show you one great benefit here. Did I mention he's my grandson? Archie's doing okay. And what a great benefit. But you know that. You all know that. Motherhood is just a part of God's creative plan, I think, to bring love and caring into the world. It's a constant reminder of that gift of love and caring that we all want. You guys love it when your mom holds you? Yeah? Yeah? We all do. Even when we get older, we still want to be held and loved because it's such a powerful dynamic at the core of who we are. We all want to be in the peaceful and protective arms of someone who loves us, and we all need to know that we are the angel at the top of the Christmas tree for someone. I guess we've had enough of show and tell. We can take that down. Let me tell you a story. I love this story about Jimmy Carter. You remember him, the President of the United States. And I'll tell you a story, not about Jimmy, but about his mom. Anybody remember his mom's name? Wasn't Rosalind, was it? That was Jimmy's wife. Lillian. Lillian was Jimmy Carter's mama. And after he had left the White House, they moved back to Plains, Georgia. And Miss Lillian had received a phone call from a woman reporter out of New York. And she wanted to come down to Plains interview Miss Carter, because there had been this article printed about Jimmy and the family, and she wanted to follow up on something, and she was hoping that Miss Carter could give her the story. Miss Carter was reluctant, to say the most, to say the least. She wanted not to do the interview, but she agreed to do it. And this reporter came down. I've been to Plains, Georgia, and I got to tell you, there's nothing but a crossroads down there. But there's a guardhouse out front, and then this driveway up to the house. So obviously she had passed by Secret Service, and she went to the door. She knocked on the door, and Miss Carter came to the door, and she answered it and invited the woman in. They sat down in the living room, and Miss Carter noticed right away that this woman was rather aggressive in her tone, and to be honest with you, she was very rude. And she started off the interview, and she said, well, your son, Jimmy Carter, ran for the presidency based on his promise to always tell the truth. Has he ever lied? And Miss Carter said, well, I think you can believe what he says. I think you can take him at his word. And the reporter kept pressing, and she said, yes, but has he ever lied? And Miss Carter said, well, I suppose he's told a white lie in his life. And the woman said, aha, so you're saying he has lied. And then the woman reporter continued, and she pressed further, and she said, Miss Carter, what is a white lie? Isn't it lying? What's a white lie in your mind? And Miss Carter said, well, I suppose it's like when you came to the front door and knocked, and I opened the door and I said, it was nice to see you. She said, I guess that would be a white lie. I love that. You see, Miss Carter was still trying to protect her boy. He had been the president of the United States of America. Maybe your child will outgrow your lap someday. I hope it takes a long time. But they will never outgrow your heart. We all need someone who loves us unconditionally. Remember what Paul said? Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It's not irritable or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable and resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices whenever they're right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. My goodness, St. Peter's, what would happen if that was a reality here in our church? I know you've had differences. I know you've had spats and fights. And I know that things aren't the way they used to be, but we can get there. What would happen if that passage from Corinthians became our reality? What if we became, even more than we are now, a loving community that learned how to be patient and kind with one another and work on this transition together? I guess what I'm saying is, what would happen? What would happen if we really were a church that didn't just talk about love, but actually were loving? I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. It's from Seattle. It was at a Special Olympics in Seattle. This was a number of years back. And there was this one event that was to take place where 9 little children, Special Olympics, I said, so these were physically and and mentally challenged children. There were 9 of them that were going to run the 100-yard dash that day. And they all lined up at the starting line and were going to make their way down to the finish line. As they all prepared to run, I don't know if they used a starter's gun or whatever, or yelled go or whatever, but when the starter started the race, 8 of them were out pretty quickly. And they were starting to run the 100 yards. And then all of a sudden they heard something. And they kind of turned around. And one little boy had fallen at the starting line. Rolled over a couple of times and he was crying. And the other 8 stopped. They turned around, they looked at each other, and they went back to the starting line. One little girl with Down syndrome bent over and helped pick him up, as did the others. She kissed him and said, "That'll make it better." And then what happened next was a miracle. They all linked arms and they walked to the finish line together. Because they understood intuitively what we struggle to catch a glimpse of. They knew that by helping another, they didn't lose anything. In fact, I would say they went down in history. Do you want to see a miracle? I'll show you a miracle if you want this morning. Are you ready? Watch this. It's a miracle. Did this cost this candle anything to light this candle? Was this candle diminished at all by giving light to this candle? Mike, would we lose anything by helping others? You see, Mike, you and I struggle with this because we're guys and we're competitive. But every mother in this room understands what we struggle to catch a glimpse of. That by helping others, rather than losing something, everybody gains something more. Am I right about that, ladies? It's in sharing. It's in sharing that love with others that we grow ourselves. We light our own candles. We light the candles of those around us. And life becomes better. Hey, St. Peter's, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to all of us as we go through this next year of transition. We're going to go from one settled minister to our next settled minister. And we're going to walk hand in hand with this strange guy called an interim minister in the middle of all of this. But we're going to learn more about what our hearts really say to us about being a wonderful church. We're going to become a church that looks back and sees the vulnerable and the hurting and turns and puts steps to our words and helps pick each other up and walk to the finish line. We're going to learn how to light the candles of one another, and we're going to be better because of it. And our world and our community will be better for it as well. I'm going to close by reading to you a piece that I really like. It's kind of another miracle, I guess you could say. Because one of the miracles of sharing light in the world is that sometimes we don't even know we're doing it. That's the strange thing. You go out there and you're helping somebody, and you didn't even know it. Just by the way you live. This is entitled, When You Thought I Wasn't Looking. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you hang my first painting on the refrigerator, and I wanted to make another. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you feed a stray cat, and I learned that it was good to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make my favorite cake for me, and I understood that the little things can be the special things in life. When you thought I wasn't looking, I heard you say a prayer, and I knew that there is a God I could always talk to, and I learned to trust in God. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make a meal and take it to a friend who was sick. And I learned that we all have to take care of each other. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you give of your time and money to help those who had little. And I learned that those who have something should help those who don't. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw how you handled your responsibilities, even when you didn't feel good. And I learned that I would have to be responsible when I grew up. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come from your eyes, and I learned that sometimes things hurt, but that it's okay to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw that you cared, and I wanted to be everything I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I learned most of life's lessons that I need to know to be a good and productive person when I grow up. And when you thought I wasn't looking, I looked at you and wanted to say, thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. Happy Mother's Day. May God bless you, and may God bless St. Peter's United Church of Christ. Friends, I have some difficult news to share with you this morning. It was between services I received word that someone you know, lay minister Mike Mathis, has had a stroke and is at the hospital. I take it he was active in this congregation for many, many years, and hopefully he will again. But I wanted to share that with you. The family has given us privilege of making that public. And I knew that you'd want to know and that you'd want to hold him in your prayers as well as the family. So please do that. You know, I'm learning all about you. Gosh, I really wish him well. What a tough thing. I know that you list in your prayer corner all the concerns that you have. I was asking Diane in the church office this week about this, and she said, yes, we've listed people that have contacted us for prayer concerns and to make this known to the congregation. I said to Diane, well, that is wonderful. That keeps people up to date. And I said, how do you know when that concern has been resolved? And she said, well, Jim, that's really good that you asked, because really we don't know unless people call the office. So let me just invite you, if you do take the time and effort to put someone on the prayer corner, please let us know how they're doing. And if it's still current, we want to be able to list them on the corner. And if things have been resolved, let us know that too, if you would. And what we'll do is we'll then take their name off, and we'll keep this to be a very current list of prayer concerns. I'm learning things about you. I'm learning that your congregation has changed. I'm learning that you used to have a few more members around here. Matter of fact, I'm sort of wondering how you used to fit everybody in. But I'm also learning that you all are pretty tightly connected, maybe like a family, and that you care about what happens in one another's lives and families. And I respect that about you, and I count on that. Don't forget to pray for our church, just as you pray for individuals and families in this church. Pray that God will lead us through this process of clarification and future. We'll look one day, not yet, friends, but one day we'll begin looking for a partner in ministry. And we'll look not for the minister that has the flashiest resume. That would be a big mistake. Probably the number one mistake that churches that are looking tend to make. But we'll spend some time taking a look at who we are, not just who we've been, but who we are and who we want to be in our community. And we'll have some opportunities that I call holy conversations shortly coming up. I think we'll take another week, and then we'll begin talking about some of that. But we're going to talk about who we are so that we'll know who we need to find to partner in ministry with us. It would be a mistake just to go try to find somebody that looks good right now. We need to see who we are, and then we'll know who to go looking for to do ministry with us. But that's coming. That's coming, and I'm very encouraged. Some of you have been asking me, Jim, what do you see? And I say, I see a very strong critical mass of people who care desperately about this church and about providing a home for people to grow in faith. And I am privileged to be a part of that with you. But we're going to help find that next settled minister, but after we have a chance to do some work. And then I look through your bulletin and I see all of these things that you're involved in. I'm learning about your cherry tree. Wow. And I'm learning about Tammy and the rummage sale that's coming up. And I see these opportunities, and I learn about the women's guild that you do. I learn about some of the quilts that you make. I've made 3 quilts. I just made a quilt for Archie. And I haven't even told you about Scarlett yet, who was born 2 months before Archie. And the quilt I made for them, 6 by 7. Ladies, 6 by 7. I'll show you someday, but I don't want to seem too cocky yet. I'll get there. I'll get there. But you have opportunities to be together, to hold hands and light one another's candles and encourage each other in this transition we're going through and have some fun in life. And man, am I privileged to be here with you in the middle of all of that. Wow. Would you pray with me? O Lord, speak to us in the silence. Help us to understand that it's probably better when we listen than when we talk, because that way we can hear you speaking to us better. I really mean that. Help us, Lord, to listen, just like Jackson was listening for his mom's voice. Help us to listen to your voice, that call that you place upon our lives, what you want us to do to invest the days we have, how you want us to be involved in this big transition here at church, and how you want us to show love and light the light of others everywhere we turn. We'll try to be quiet, Lord, and listen more than we speak. We do pray for our church, that we will see your guiding hand and that you will bring us through this wilderness time to a place of new hope and promise. And we will trust you along the way. And now let us join our hearts and our voices in saying that prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray and continues to teach us right here at St. Peter's by saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Well, here's the deal. Just work with me. Sometimes I jump around on the bulletin and I don't even know when I'm doing it. So we've already talked a little bit about what's going on in the church. Don't worry about it. Just go be the church. That's the only thing that really matters. So if you would, we have placed those offering plates by the door. Some of you have already put something in that. If you intend to do that today, please know how much we appreciate it. And we want to say thank you. Thank you for that support. It means a lot right now. You know, we're down in attendance and giving and that sort of thing. We'll get back there one day, but we appreciate what you do for us right now and help us to be that church. But I thought we would close with a prayer of thanksgiving. If you would please stand and let us join in prayer. Holy God, source of love and life, with deep humility, we lift our prayers to you. We give thanks for all the unexpected and expected blessings of our lives, especially our mothers and all those who have cared for us. We give thanks that love and life still have the power to overwhelm and astound us. In the days to come, help us to be ever mindful of your sacred presence. Grant us the grace to celebrate every gift you send our way. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Well, friends, may you go in peace. Wear your mask if you have to. Know that you are embraced in the wonderful, loving arms of God, and that you are surrounded by a supportive community of faith, a place that loves you and welcomes you, a place to help you to grow and be the church called St. Peter's United Church of Christ. Go in peace.